Good morning, everyone. I've just got the go ahead from the Jiu-Jitsu to give a talk. I was a little confused there. I wasn't sure if we're having a kinhin or not. And looks like one or two people might be in a similar boat. But I'll start my talk. Buddhism regards us as a human, having Buddha nature, something genuine, authentic in being a human being. But we've lost touch with that. Because in this life, and who knows how many lives in the past, we've adopted behaviors that were, perhaps we could call them defensive, ways of coping with situations. And we weren't able to be fully present, fully authentic. Our work in Zen practice is to gradually access and become free of all patterns that don't serve us. It's not so much, although we could talk about becoming more of a Bodhisattva, it's more accurate to say letting the Bodhisattva that's deep in us to gradually blossom more and more fully. The Bodhisattva is not missing from us, it's simply being covered up, masked by old patterns of behavior in the past that's hidden who we truly are. The prime method that I was shown in my Zen practice was to make the effort to bring forth the Bodhisattva that I was already, but it's hidden. And the way to do this is to be aware, notice where I am, be connected with the situation I'm in. On the other side, make the effort to come out more and more fully in a way that's beneficial as a Bodhisattva for the situation I'm in. Along the way of doing this, we become aware of what gets in the way. We find our own way of getting free of it, letting it fall away. So we manifest more fully as a Bodhisattva in the situation that we find ourselves in. The model that my main teacher, Joshu Roshi, used when I was training with him was based on Rinzai-ji's fourfold analysis. Rinzai-ji's fourfold analysis spoke about the relationship between inside and outside. In Rinzai-ji's words, it was between the person and environment. And Rinzai-ji spoke about 4 positions this relationship could take, the relationship between the person and environment. Could appear in any one of 4 ways. And through our practice, we come to see this in ourselves. I think most of you have practiced with Roshi, so you probably know his terminology. Rinzai-ji wrote about the 4 states of relationship in a poetic way. Roshi, as I heard it, used the term plus and minus activities, and 2 0 points at the end of the one at the end of the plus activity, one at the end of the minus activity. I remember studying with him at first. It was very intellectual. Perhaps that was the start, understanding the model he was using. Then through practice and the demands of Zazen was to manifest it, to make it real, not so much a theory. And of course, that's the hard work, because of these old habitual patterns are pretty tenacious, pretty deep-rooted. But little by little, we get free of them. These two activities, Roshi spoke about plus and minus, as I work with them in the context of Rinzai-ji's fourfold analysis, is simply the effort to be aware, to be connected in the environment I was in, to be part of the environment I was in, not so much looking from the outside, which is where I started from, but to actually be part of the environment I was in. And the other activity was to manifest, to come forth, to express myself in a way that contributed to the environment. The understanding of this actually isn't so difficult. And along the way of practice, we actually go through innumerable steps. Perhaps at a particular point, we find ourselves really catching us taking a step. And we should acknowledge that and appreciate that. But there's another step. There's actually infinite number of steps along the Bodhisattva path. But little by little, our Buddha nature, our, let's call it, sometimes I say authentic self, but it loses, that term doesn't include the sense of the relatedness in the situation we're in. Little by little, it becomes apparent, begins to blossom. So the practice in just practical terms is open your eyes, notice where you are, notice what's happening. Open your eyes is really to open to the 5 senses and experience the 5 senses are naturally flowing. Through the effort of our practice, we realize we're already seeing, we're already hearing, we're already in the environment we're in. We're at home with where we are, we're part of where we are. Little by little, this experience and the realization of the experience begins to grow. And on the inside, the practice of ourself, it's made up a number of components. And if we read about Buddhism, we might read the Buddhist take on how it analyzes the aspects of ourself. For example, in the 5 skandhas, we could just simplify it and just say, we might be thinking, we might be feeling, we might be acting with our body in some way. And we practice that. There's no problem with thinking, feeling, manifesting. The question is how we do that. How do we manifest as a bodhisattva? I don't know, a couple of names here I don't recognize. I don't know if you were closer to the beginning of practice. The intent is not to stop thinking, stop feeling, stop acting in a way, but to function in a way that's focused and is integrated with the situation we're in. So that all the extra thinking, maybe in our Zazen, you might be daydreaming a bit, fantasizing. You might be indulging in all sorts of feelings and emotions. All that gradually becomes naturally focused. What is this? What should I be doing? So our natural faculties become focused for what's right in front of us, for what we're part of. In this way, our thinking, our feelings, the emotional body, emotional self, our actions become saner, become relevant to where I am. And this, in Rinzai-ji's words, is person and environment coming together. Now we come to an important point. It's, how shall I introduce this? In the Heart Sutra, we have form and emptiness. Emptiness is shunyata. Empty of anything fixed, separate, permanent. That's what emptiness means. It doesn't mean nothing. It means nothing solid, permanent, enduring. Everything is flow. Everything is change. So thinking itself is not a problem. The question is, how do we think? How does the Bodhisattva think? How do we feel when we meet something? How does the Bodhisattva feel? How do we respond? How does the Bodhisattva respond? So if any of you are new to practice, we might start sitting and just realizing how crazy it is inside our head, so to speak, stuff that goes on. And the first reaction is, how can I stop it? How can I just cut it off? Stop thinking, stopping this, stopping that. It can't be stopped. But what can be done is through practice, becoming focused, being more straightforward, more simple. Let our natural faculties flow in a focused, natural way for the situation we're in. And then as we practice this more and more, the natural old habits of avoidance of dealing with what's in front of us that come up with fantasies, dreams, indulgences, gradually we become stronger. They fall away. And our functioning is just more simple and straightforward. Along this way of gradual practice, this gets into Rinzai-ji's other two positions of the fourfold analysis, or what Roshi called 0 points, what the Heart Sutra calls shunyata. There's times where we so fully open to our environment that the sense of self disappears. It's just environment. I give the story or the example. It's based in Vancouver. We have a park here that goes out over the Gulf, surrounded by water. And it's on the west side of Vancouver. And there's a wonderful seawall that goes around it. People walk or bicycle around the seawall. And it hit me one day. I was going with some friends around, and it was in the evening. And as I turned the corner, there was an incredible red sunset over Georgia Strait, over the water. And everyone just stopped. And then said, wow, fantastic. We might find ourselves saying, that blew me away. But if we really sharpen our awareness, really notice what was happening in our consciousness, letting consciousness getting much more perceptive of itself through awareness, we realize that as we turn the corner and there's a sudden surprise, the sky filled with redness, the self actually disappeared. You could say it melted into the redness of the sunset. And then there was a moment, and the sense of self appeared again. It says, wow, wonderful. And sometimes, quite unself-consciously, it expresses wisdom. It says, it blew me away. We might use those words, but if our awareness was really sharp, we'd realize that phrase, it blew me away, was literally what happened. We went to zero in the object. There was only object, there wasn't subject. Our awareness had sharpened to notice one of the 0 points in Rinzai-ji's fourfold analysis. Roshi, most of us have been students of Roshi, mentioned some of the model, the language he was using while I was training. He said, you do the minus activity until you reach a 0 point, where minus completes itself as the red sunset. It's towards environment in Rinzai-ji's language. The other pole, the other side, is the person. When we act, when we do something, sometimes we do it so fully, we become the activity. I like the expression that is in an English poet, Yeats. And his phrase was, who can tell the dancer from the dance? Dancing, something we enjoy doing. Sometimes we're just so naturally fully involved. We can't tell. We've become the dancing. There isn't a sense of myself dancing. We become that activity. And this is the 0 point, completing another step in our practice, in the practice of a person, or what Roshi called plus activity. We go through this again and again and again. There's millions of steps, infinite number of steps we take as we grow along the Bodhisattva path. It's the practice of becoming, speaking generally, becoming more perceptive of where I am, what's happening. What really is the state of that other person? More and more perception as we walk the Bodhisattva path. And as we walk the Bodhisattva path, the potential of the Bodhisattva is expressed, manifest more and more fully in an infinite number of steps. This is the way I was taught to practice, and I practiced as well as I can, and have had some experience of this. there's along the steps we take, especially at the beginning, it's a little confusing. We're tied up so much in ourselves. We take ourselves in a solid way. We take our problems as being ourselves. We're new to practice and find ourselves daydreaming a lot. We think, I am. So if any of you are fairly new to practice, it's really important to understand if we're daydreaming or indulging in ourselves. That's not who we are. That's something we're doing. And it's important to understand the difference. It's what we're doing. It's not who we fundamentally are. Please reflect on that. You're new to practice. Even if you don't have a sense of who you are, know that you're just the thoughts you're having. You are experiencing thoughts. You are not your thoughts. This is important for newcomers to understand. It's easy for new people to have a thought and think, that's who I am. Understand, there's you that is having thoughts. They come and go. It is not who you are. It's the same with feelings or emotions, or if we get indulged in ourselves. It's something we are experiencing. It is not who we are. We begin to see this. And when we get caught up in our thoughts, we're indulging in our emotions. After a while, we have a stability in ourselves, and it seems these are just noises somewhere in the background. They're not who we fundamentally are. We're beginning to be in touch with some sense of ourselves. This is to gradually, little by little, get free, become free. These old patterns that we picked up, who knows where in the past, our old conditioning, our old karma. And along the path of this practice, we become a little clearer, clear-eyed. We hear better. We know better. We become, putting it strongly, we become a little saner in how we respond, how we manifest. It's important to remember, the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, is also a human being. We have these words that they're talking about the human condition. Some people are perceptive over time. Other people simply practice. And without really seeing the details, the mechanics, the workings of their practice, transform. Everyone has their own way. This is the conclusion I've come. I know with me, I got very caught. I seem to catch up with little experiences and get really caught up in them. Other people don't. They just simply walk on in a sure way along the Bodhisattva path. We're all quite different. Although we're human, we're quite different in how we're human. We're quite different in how we experience the path of practice, the path of the Bodhisattva. And it just reflects our natural faculties. They're neither right nor wrong. We all have our own makeup of our natural faculties. And that's what we have to work with in our practice. So though we all do the same practice, we all have a very individual experience of our practice. little by little, we're more aware. We feel more connected with where we are and what's happening. Little by little, we trust ourselves more. And that's another phrase of Lin-chi. We trust ourselves in being able to come alive in the situation we're in, to manifest in some way. I don't know where you are. I've met many of you, but I'm not as close with you as I am with my own students. But quite often, I find someone I have to say it. I like to repeat the story of Lin-chi. He's talking with his students. And he says rhetorically, "What's up with you? What's up with you in your practice? Why can't you get it?" Then he answered for them. He said, "It's lack of trust in yourself." And I feel here in Vancouver, the people I meet, there's a lot of younger people at the Zen Center. And I find these days, there's a lot of anxiety, even a low-key depression on younger people. And it reminds me of Lin-chi's phrase, why this lack of trust in yourself? And this is just a personal observation. I think people, younger people, really need support in trusting themselves. In Sasaki Roshi's phrase, to be able to manifest, not be absorbed, caught up in themselves so much. But that's a passing observation. We have quite a few younger people in Vancouver. And my task, so to speak, is to get a sense of them and find out of the various Zen teachings, which ones are most relevant for the state they're in. Little by little, inside and outside come together. In Lin-chi's fourfold analysis, one of the poems are when person and environment have come together. Our practice is to notice that we pass through all these states or stages of Lin-chi's fourfold analysis. It's not knowing just one, but realizing sometimes we feel very much part of where we are, our environment. At other times, we fill out, we're manifesting ourselves, we feel complete. There's an energy through all of us as we express ourselves in some way. Over time, these come together. This manifesting of ourself is to develop a self, not a fixed self, but a self that can manifest in a situation. And as it gets stronger in trusting itself, in manifesting itself, it comes to know its nature is relational. It's not separate and apart from things. The nature of ourself is relational. We can't actually exist apart from the relationship with and in this moment. We actually, in a way, have a larger sense of ourself. That larger sense of ourself takes our environment, to use Lin-chi's phrase, as actually part of ourself. We're not separate, part. And of course, at the beginning, we understand this intellectually, but we actually, in our mind, have the sense of we always see the outside as outside of ourselves. There comes a point in our practice where we come to experience the outside is actually part of us. We're not separate, apart. Remember Roshi saying, there's no distance, there's no separation between inside and outside. Perhaps this is what is meant when we come across Zen terms like our larger self, not just myself as an individual, but one that is able to actually embrace the whole of this moment. This is not just with our mind, it's the full expression of ourself. At the moment, I'm fairly close to the screen, but it's with our whole body. And sometimes I get my students to take their arms and just open up to everything. Let the outside in be part of you. When we do it physically with our whole being, we experience it more. We're not just trying to do it with our mind. It's our whole self. It is breathing everything in, making everything part of ourselves. Maybe you folks are too embarrassed, especially the older ones, to actually do it. But just try opening your arms wide and breathe everything in. And maybe there's a little feeling of coming alive, embracing, absorbing everything. It's a little trick. And actually, it's not just mine. I've seen other people do it, other teachers. And it's to have a whole being experience of the connectedness of being part of everything. Because it's so easy just to practice with our mind, to have an experience in our mind instead of our whole self. Our whole self includes our heart. It includes our whole body. To manifest ourselves is with our whole being. It's so easy just to do it with an intent in our mind and just leave our heart and body behind. So practice that every now and then. Just find the experience of just being alive with everything. And Zen practice is just to do this again and again and again. In a theoretical way, so every situation we come across, embrace it, become alive with it. Of course, we can't do this in practice. People will think we're crazy every time we met someone. We do that, or we walked into a store and suddenly embrace the whole store. But if we have that sense, that inside and outside, person and environment come together. It's a living thing. It's energy. It's alive. You feel the energy. You're awake with it all. This is part of practice. It's not and this, I think, is really important. It's been important for myself, and I think it's just my character, my old karma, made me sort of a little holding back. And I found this was a wonderful practice to actually come alive with everything. As Lin Chi said, just trust yourself. What's your problem? It's lack of trust in yourself. How do you trust yourself? If you just think it, now I'm trusting myself. That's just a passing thought. How do you express trust in yourself? It's coming alive with your whole being, all elements of yourself. So Zen practice can be fun as we begin to do it. It's fun to actually start blossoming into the potential of who we are. It's Zen practice is a serious thing, but I've come to see that although it's a serious thing, if we're too serious, that gets in the way. It can be fine to have this almost playful way of experimenting with what the Bodhisattva is. More and more as we practice, it's not so much about myself, but the relationship with this moment, as this moment, contributing to this moment. Inside and outside, big Buddhist word, they intermerge. You can't really tell one from the other. we have a sense, an experiential realization. We are the relationship that we're doing right now. We're not myself with things out there. In all the various Buddhist and even Zen analysis of the self, this is the coming together of inside and outside as the activity we're doing. And I tell students here in Vancouver, especially younger ones, that it pains me in a way just to see the difficulty they're in this difficult, complex world we're in. One where we're overwhelmed, especially with our devices, knowing everything on the internet. It's overwhelming. Just to encourage people, especially younger people, just to trust themselves, to manifest, to start coming alive. Another way of saying it is, it's not just to be in touch with yourself, but more than that, to express yourself. This is an important part of Zen practice. These are just my own views, but somehow us modern folks, we're too intellectually orientated. We're too theoretically oriented. We're too much really in our heads. It's coming alive with our whole being. I remember, I'm really getting on in years, and I remember when I was younger, somehow life, maybe it's part of being young, is much more real, much more physical. But I think it also reflects the time I was in. It was simpler times, and it was easier to get a sense of your whole being, of doing this or that. We weren't pulled 100 different ways all the time. And again, just my personal view, we're in a modern economic culture that is actually, this is my view, is actually pulling us away from our sense of ourselves. We're being manipulated to lose the deep sense of ourselves. I remember once going to a place where I was working in a group home and seeing on the train I was taking, there was a notice, I think it was advertisement, I think it was with Sony, so Sony Walkman. This was a long time ago before smartphones were around. And the advertisement was, get a Sony Walkman. It allows you to escape from life into music or something. And at that moment, it just hit me so strongly that there's so much in our culture to buy things, to do things, to get lost in some alternate imaginary environment, like the music of a Sony Walkman, and lose touch with the present thing, to escape the hard task of being present, being engaged. But these are just my personal musing. I really think it's a difficult time we're in, especially for younger people. And for all of us, especially with the internet, it's so seductive, pulling us away from being present with where we are. There's a need for it. But when we're on the internet, do it consciously. Is this what I want to be doing? Am I getting information? Or am I getting in watching a video is fine, but do it consciously, do it fully, and not get seduced into watching the next one and the next one, and oh, what's this site doing? What's this one's doing? If you're on the internet, do it 100% consciously. When you've finished, leave it. Where am I now? What's happening? What should I be doing? Really, practice comes down to that. opening up. Where am I? What's happening? What should I be doing? Step by step. And I was talking before that it's been analyzed by Lin Chi in his fourfold analysis, or Roshi with his plus and minus and 0 points. To me, it comes down to in a practical way. Where am I? What's happening? What should I be doing? Again and again. Because it's flow, it's change. Existence is like a river. Young people here read a lot about flow. I forget the name, it's a Czechoslovakian philosopher that speaks of flow, coming from his own investigation of his nature. And to my mind, it catches the Buddhist tenets of existence. Everything is flow, everything is change, nothing is fixed, permanent. I like the analogy of a river. Life is like a river. We're swimming in the river. How do we swim? The river has its own, thanks Hel, wonderful scholar here. Sorry, it's a bit of a tease. Hal has just on chat popped up the name of the Czechoslovakian philosopher. I find, especially with younger people, using simpler analogies rather than the very elaborate, very careful, very deep Buddhist analysis really gets them going. It's the practice of swimming in the river of life. The river of life has many different currents. Sometimes it's sweet, just slowly, the water slowly passes by, life slowly passes by. Suddenly there's a little swirl, runs over some big rocks, it gets turbulent. Sometimes it's in a whirlpool, we get swept round and round in a circle. Our practice is learning to swim in the river of life. This is the path, the unfoldment of ourself along the steps of a Bodhisattva. The ability to respond as part of life, contributing to life, helping life. There's lots of models, just going back to Lin Chi's fourfold analysis, where person and environment come together, flow without a problem. I quoted Yeats' phrase, the poet, wonderful poet, who can tell the dancer from the dance? This is why that unpronounceable name of the Czechoslovakian philosopher called flow. We're alive in the flow of things. This is really what our practice becomes more and more. More and more, we're aware, we notice. We see clearer, we hear clearer. We trust ourselves more fully, and little by little, we grow in this path of the Bodhisattva. There's really not too much else to say. We could keep analyzing it indefinitely, but the important point is to practice it, to support each other, to inspire each other, and together walk this path of the Bodhisattva. We can read something that's inspiring, just using the words Bodhisattva. Resonates with me. Every now and then I read, because I love it, is Shanti Davis, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Path. It's a very old Indian Buddhist poem, really. But for me, it inspires me. What inspires you? What inspires you? makes you want to get more fully, stronger, more active in your practice. Find things a little bit. You don't have to read a lot to understand a lot, but read what will inspire you, that will give you direction, that will give you tips to sharpen and make more effective your practice. I really don't have too much more to say in this talk. It's really just, to me, the basics of what practice is, how to practice, and do my best to encourage everyone as we encourage each other. I don't know how it is in, where is it? Some of you are in Los Angeles, someone's in Texas, someone's on Vashon Island, just seeing the different people here. I don't know how it is in your local community, but here in Vancouver, a lot of young people come here, and they're very, thanks for the support of everyone. This is real Sangha effort. A lot of younger people here are very confused. And what I find is what really helps them, coming from my own experience, my own learning and realization from Buddhist practice. I'm inspired by one Zen master was asked by a student, what is Zen? It happens quite a lot. We have a huge number of records of monks asking their teacher, their Zen master, what is Zen? And the wonderful thing with these stories is their responses, seeing the richness of human nature as it appears with one master after another. Someone was asked, what is Zen? And he just simply opened his arms. How do we embrace? What are hands? Hands are giving. Maybe you are aware of subtle energy. It flows out of our hands to give, to contribute. This is practice. What are we reminding ourselves every day to inspire ourselves, to become clearer? It's so easy to be distracted. I go to do some work on my computer, and next thing I know, I'm checking this and that. I'm encouraged to look at this and that by some ad, by some little subtle thing or on a web page. It's hard times we're in, but little by little, we strengthen. We strengthen in our practice. We get a little sharper. And here it's necessary to say, especially for newer people, not to be discouraged. At the beginning, in a way, it's most difficult. That's when we're most burdened with old karma, old conditioning. But not to get discouraged when we become aware of our old karma, our old conditioning. But accept it gently for what it is. It's something we picked up along the way. Be kind to yourself. Be able to accept, to love the fullness of ourselves, the flaws as well as the good things. If we get too critical, we tend to spiral down into a little self-critical dark hole that we've made ourselves. So have a humor. I find it very helpful to have a humor about the human condition, to be able to accept things without getting tight with them, without letting them pull us down. Having a sense of humor, I think, helps us lighten a little bit, helps us walk a little more lightly. We walk the Bodhisattva path. We walk the path of our practice. Roshi used the word, I first heard it with Roshi, since then I've discovered all those early Zen masters used the same, or even Tibetan masters use the same word. When we fixate ourselves, when we become permanent, when we have a permanent sense of ourselves, we get stuck. I find humor, being able to chuckle at ourselves, is so effective for softening, melting that way we solidify. I'm this, I'm that. But find your own way. That was the thing that helped me. The important thing is to find your own way in the path. We can get lots of suggestions from the innumerable books we've had. We don't have to read a lot to get a lot of knowledge. We simply have to read enough to know how to practice, how to become clearer in the various stages of our practice. In the end, we have to find our own way. We have wonderful support right now. We have the people that are here. We have in our own local temple. We have in our lineage. We have in a much larger circle people that are doing spiritual practice, not just of Buddhism. To know that we're not alone in this, that we're with others. Thoughts like this can help us lighten, give us support, give us strength as we go forward. I really think I should stop now. When I give a talk, it tends to just flow. And there's a certain point where it seems like the pressure of the flow starts dropping off. And I think I've reached this point now. So I'll leave the talk now. We'll continue sitting for the rest of the day. And even just saying that reminds me of something else. Sitting is such a simple, powerful technique. When I started practice, I felt blessed. I have something that allows me to get in touch with myself. And as I got in touch with myself, well, there's a quite surprise of finding what there was in myself, all the stuff that was going on. But in the end, even though I had all sorts of supports, it was up to me to process it, to grow as a Bodhisattva, to, as Trungpa said, become sane. An ordinary human being is really what the Bodhisattva is. To repeat again, Buddhism says, we are already that, but we tend to identify with our old karma, our old conditioning, think that's who I am. As I was mentioning, when we start Zazen, is to realize we're not our thoughts, not our emotional indulgences, etc. See them as something we're experiencing, not what we are. Beginning to get in touch with Buddha nature, authentic self, Bodhisattva, that in fact has always been there, that has been covered up. Open it up, let it grow, let it blossom. Enjoy the practice. It's important to enjoy it. Sometimes people are too serious. This is my personal point of view. The Japanese seem very grounded, almost like too serious about it. I find with, at least here in Vancouver with people, if you make it enjoyable, it's almost fun to practice. It's a lot easier for them to get more fully, more deeply into it. That's just a personal observation I have with my own students. But here I am, the flow's slowing again, so I'm going to end now. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll continue through the rest of the day.